The first Dragonwood fire stair came down for a gallery of war dragon masks before Maude Kestrel could prove the sealed servant's wing had not stayed empty. The hammer struck at noon beneath the eastern windows of Cinderhall Palace, where winter light fell over scaffold poles and the black-red Dragonwood spine folded against the servants' passage wall. Courtiers had gathered to watch an evacuation stair removed for beauty. The new gallery would carry bronze masks of war dragons, mourning banners stitched in gold, and a marble aisle where no noble sleeve would brush a servant's shoulder during memorial processions. Maude stood below the scaffold in her builder's coat, her widow's veil pinned back, because smoke had taught her never to let cloth near the eyes. At her boots lay an oilcloth packet sealed with builder's cord. No one had opened it. Palace steward Ollis Merrow read the demolition order in a voice trained to make procedure sound merciful. The Dragonwood fire stairs affixed along the Cinderhall servants' wing are hereby judged obsolete, obstructive to the royal gallery expansion, and likely to invite panic by suggesting unauthorized passage in the event of fire. Likely to invite panic. 6 years earlier, after the South Kitchen blaze, that same phrase had been written beside Bram Kestrel's name. Her husband had died in the mechanism room with both hands locked around the release wheel, keeping a servant exit open while the corridor filled behind him. No one in the gallery had ever said rescue. The official record said panic. Dragon King Garan Vale stood beside the steward. Black ceremonial armor fitted close, a pale dragonfire scar climbing the left side of his throat. He looked like a ruler who had already accepted the inspection before him. "My warning was not about passage," Maude said. "It was about occupancy." Ollis lowered the parchment. "The palace register records that wing as empty after the last safety consolidation. The register records what was entered. My stairs record what crossed them. Wood does not overrule domestic records. Dragonwood remembers regular crossing, not names, not guilt, weight, and heat. Enough to show bodies where your ledger says air." She lifted the packet. The packet contained 3 readings: stair, pressure count, hinge, soot sample, and night heat. Loss map. I counted heat loss at night. I measured stair pressure at dawn. The fold line has taken repeated weight from the sealed side for 6 weeks. Repeated weight was not a face. It was not a name. It was only enough to make the empty wing entry answer. A palace could lie on paper. It could not make warm stone cold by decree. Ollis's expression stayed composed. "Mistress Kestrel is skilled, Your Majesty. But grief can teach a woman to distrust silence. The steward's office has inspected the domestic rolls. No lawful servants are housed beyond that seal." "Work rotations?" Maude asked. "That is not housing. A rotation could disappear from housing rolls and still leave bodies in rooms after midnight." The murmur sharpened. Garen's gaze moved from her face to the packet, then to the Dragonwood spine half cut from the wall. He had not opened her readings. Maude could see it in the patience of a king hearing an objection already reduced for him. "The expansion was reviewed," he said. "By whom?" "The steward's office, palace architects, and crown domestic inspectors. Domestic order is not evacuation law." Even the hammermen paused. Garen stepped down from the dais. Heat moved with him. Not flame, but dragon blood contained behind royal skin. "The War Dragon Gallery is not vanity, Mistress Kestrel. It will carry the names and masks of the beasts who died defending this crown, and the servants who polish those masks need an exit behind them." For a moment, something shifted in his face. Not apology, not belief. Only irritation at being forced to hold a practical fact beside a noble one. "You were paid for the original construction," he said. "I was paid for work. I was not paid to pretend the work stopped mattering when it became inconvenient." Ollis gave a measured breath. "Your Majesty, this is precisely why demolition should proceed. The late Bram Kestrel's accident left a painful history here. The court does not dishonor him by preventing further confusion." Maude looked past him to the black door at the far end of the stripped corridor. The royal fire seal hung there in red wax, stamped with Garen's crest and chained to a registry ring. Beneath it, near the lower hinge, a soot line marked the stone. Not proof, only a question the floor had kept. The order did not make the wing empty, Maude said. It only made the exit beautiful enough to lose. Garen's eyes hardened. You accuse my steward of falsifying the royal register? No. She held his gaze because anything softer would be dismissed as grief. I accuse the records of failing to match the floor. That answer left less for Ollis to swat aside. The hammerman looked to the steward. Ollis gave the smallest procedural nod. The hammer came down again. The first main support split. A cut could destroy a stair. It could also expose what the stair had been carrying. A crack ran through the Dragonwood like pain under skin. Ember lines woke inside the grain, dim and deep. The glow was not judgment. It was stored load waking under a broken hinge. There was no fire. But the cut had opened the hinge spine, where 6 weeks of stored heat and repeated weight had settled. The loosened tread dropped from the wall, caught itself on the inner joint, and unfolded one measured step, then another, then a third. Not toward freedom, not toward guilt. Under evacuation pressure, Dragonwood unfolded along the path, most often weighted by bodies seeking air. Every ember line in the grain bent toward the pressure side of the sealed wing, where the black locked door bore the king's fire crest. Maude heard Bram's voice from a memory blackened by smoke. Wood does not remember lies. Only weight, heat, and the direction people ran when no one opened the way. A guard reached for the registry chain. Ollis lifted a hand. That seal cannot even be reviewed outside domestic authorization. Then authorize review, Maude said. She faced Garen. Order the fire, seal registry, live occupancy count, and stair pressure reading under witness. The court waited for Garen to refuse again. The stair had not accused Ollis. It had not cleared Maude. The next question was not who lied. It was who marked a working wing empty before anyone counted the people using it. The fire seal registry did not say Ollis Merrow had hidden servants behind the sealed wing. It said Garen Vale's crest had kept the door closed while the stair recorded heat and crossing pressure behind it. Garen did not order the door opened. That mattered. The court had leaned forward for spectacle, for a broken seal and a chamber giving up shame. Maude knew better than to feed them a story before the records could carry it. A door opened too soon could be closed again by a clever office. A count made under witness had weight. The Dragon King lifted one gauntleted hand. Bring the fire seal registry, the domestic occupancy roll, and the last 3 maintenance readings for this wing. The seal remains unbroken. Ollis Merrow bowed, like a man defending procedure. Domestic authorization requires a steward's countersign before restricted wing records may be reviewed outside office custody. Then countersign review, Garen said. Here. A narrow table was brought beneath the half-cut Dragonwood spine. The loosened stairs hung there, 3 treads unfolded into empty air, ember lines dimming but not gone. Maude did not touch them. A live reading could be ruined by a builder too eager to prove herself. She kept her hand still while 2 crown witnesses laid the book beside her packet. No one invited her closer. Garen stood between the table and the court, not beside Maude. He had not restored her authority. He had not apologized for the demolition hammer. He had only agreed that a stair which moved without fire deserved records before ruin. The first page gave the closure date, 7 days after the blaze that killed Bram Kestrel. Ollis read aloud. Cinder Hall North Service Chamber and adjoining dormant rooms sealed under royal fire crest. Reason? Instability after unauthorized corridor release. Occupancy status. Emptied. Domestic witness. Steward's office. Crown mark. Provisional. Unauthorized corridor release. The registry did not write that servants escaped through it. It wrote only that the corridor had been opened without permission. Bram had turned the release wheel because smoke climbs faster than permission. He had held it while cooks, laundresses, ash boys, and 2 maids crossed through the service throat. The court had never counted those footsteps. It had counted the opened corridor. "Continue," Garin said. The next inspection mark was clean and recent. 3 mornings before demolition. Seal intact. Occupancy unchanged. Empty. Domestic review complete. No hazard requiring evacuation delay. Maude's packet remained unopened until Garin looked at it himself. Reader stair. Pressure count. A crown builder cut the cord. North fold line. Cinder Hall servants wing. 6 weeks of dawn readings. Average weighted crossing from sealed side to stair spine. 30. 1 pressure events per night. Highest count, 46. Lowest count, 18. The court stirred, but confusion moved through the sound. Ollis folded his hands. Pressure events do not equal persons. Storage crates may have been moved. Cleaning frames. Firewood. Linen carts. That was true. It was why Maude had brought soot and heat beside pressure. "Yes," she said. "That is why I asked for all 3 readings." The builder lifted the second sheet. Hinge. Soot sample. Fine soot lodged in lower joint. Pattern consistent with disturbed warm air, not dragged cart residue. No wheel scoring found along the immediate fold line. "Meaning?" Garin asked. "The stair was taking human crossing pressure more often than cart pressure," Maude said. "Not proof of who, not proof of housing. Proof that the empty wing entry does not match the mechanism." Ollis turned a page in the domestic roll. "Work rotations exist for cleaning, lamp service, coal relief, and occasional night repair. A wing may be empty of housing and still crossed lawfully. A rotation could disappear from housing rolls and still leave bodies in rooms after midnight. You assert sleep where the roll records labor. I assert heat where the roll records absence. The night heat loss map was opened last. Blue ink marked cold stone. Red ink marked warmth. After evening lock. The crown builder read more quietly now. Residual warmth along sealed side floor line on nights of the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 10th bell rotations. Concentrated near lower door gap and inner hinge channel. Pattern inconsistent with sealed vacancy. Could a furnace line explain it? Garin asked. Not unless the furnace moved when the workers did, Maude said. Ollis did not rise to it. Or the chamber retains heat poorly because Mistress Kestrel's mechanism disrupted the wall. The stair was built after the first safety review, Maude said. The heat appears after the work rotations changed. Ollis looked directly at her. Not guilt. Not yet. Only calculation meeting a builder who had kept dates. Garin took the domestic summary from the table. "Where is the occupancy warning?" he asked. Ollis inclined his head. "Summarized under public inconvenience and emotional objection. The office judged the readings inconclusive." "Inconclusive is not absent," Maude said. Garin's eyes cut to her. He was angry, still unwilling to admit a summary had made him smaller than the danger in his walls. "When was demolition authorized?" he asked. "Yesterday at 3rd bell," the scribe said. "And the live reading request? Entered 2 days before that. Not advanced to Crown Review. A warning could not fail. A king who had never been made to read it." Ollis placed one finger on the registry. "A clerk may have misfiled a builder's protest. That does not establish occupancy, danger, or misconduct." "No," Maude said. "It establishes that the demolition order moved faster than the warning attached to the stair." Garin looked at the half-unfolded Dragonwood. "Run the live pressure reading under witness." The crown builder set a brass gauge beneath the broken hinge. The needle trembled as the hinge released stored load into the gauge. Heat, weight, release tension, repeated crossing. The measure stopped above the vacancy line. Then, as the hinge settled, It climbed 1 mark higher. The stair did not speak. It did not name a liar. It only held its pressure in front of the court until the empty wing record began to look less like a fact and more like an answer, accepted before the floor was allowed to disagree. At the bottom of the fire seal registry, beneath the recent inspection, the scribe found a smaller notation in cramped clerk's ink. Cross-reference. Release. Wheel log. South mechanism room. The room where Bram Kestrel had died with both hands on the release wheel. Garen saw Maude read it before anyone said her husband's name. The cross-reference did not clear Bram. It only proved the same sealed wing had once been closed around the story of how he died. The release wheel log did not say Bram Kestrel had caused panic. It said the south corridor had opened while smoke filled the kitchens and servants crossed before the official record learned to call rescue disorder. The book came from the firehouse archive in a black iron case. Maude had not touched that log since the inquest, when men who had never entered smoke asked why her husband had opened a restricted corridor. Now it lay beneath the half-cut Dragonwood stair. Garen did not give it to Maude. He gave it to the Crown fire reader. Mercy could be dismissed. A reading under office witness could not be folded away. "Read the mechanism entry," Garen said. The fire reader opened to the night of the south kitchen blaze. Second bell after midnight. Kitchen smoke entered lower service throat. South mechanism wheel released from locked position. Corridor opened. Ash runner passage to Cinderhall North service line. Release held manually for 12 minutes. Counterweight failed to relock while wheel remained under hand pressure. Bram's hand pressure. Maude kept her face still. Ollis Merrows stood with a domestic roll tucked beneath one arm. Manual release of a restricted corridor is precisely the hazard noted in the closure summary. The log says why it opened, Maude said. Not whether it should have been called hazard, the fire reader continued. Crossing marks recorded by floor soot after suppression. 29 from kitchen side to north service line. Firehouse witness roll attached. 29 was not a verdict. It was only the number the old summary had not wanted to carry. The number did not clear Bram. It did not restore Maude. It only placed bodies in the corridor before the palace wrote that the corridor itself had caused disorder. Garen's gaze lowered. "Read the witnesses. Head cook, Nera Voss, Mark witnessed. Laundrymaid Pell, Mark witnessed. Ashboy Tommen, Mark witnessed. 2 scullery sisters, names partially burned. 1 coal porter. 3 lamp servants. 6 unassigned kitchen staff. Firehouse captain's notation. Crossing completed before roof beam fall." Ollis raised one hand. "Witness rolls taken during smoke are imprecise. The firehouse may record movement without establishing lawful occupancy." "No one asked it to establish occupancy," Maude said. "The question is whether the corridor was opened for panic or evacuation." A silence followed. Not agreement. Only the court discovering the 2 words were not the same. Garen turned a page himself. "Who wrote disorder?" The fire reader hesitated. "Initial firehouse note says emergency release during smoke obstruction. Later domestic closure summary says unauthorized corridor release, created staff disorder, and required service line sealing. Later was the dangerous word. Later meant smoke had stopped speaking before the office began." "Whose hand?" Garen asked. "Copied by domestic risk Clark Halvan. Reviewed under steward's office. The signature is old. Not Steward Merrows." Ollis inclined his head. "The current office inherited a safety classification and continued using it. That does not prove the classification was false." "No," Maude said. "It proves the palace kept using a summary after the full log had more in it. The closure summary was brought next. It was thinner than the mechanism log. Too thin. A king could read it in less than a minute and believe he had understood a fire." The scribe read aloud. "Following unauthorized corridor release and documented staff disorder, Cinderhall North Service Chamber and adjoining dormant rooms shall remain sealed." Emergency passage deemed prone to confusion during high heat events. Future evacuation route to be consolidated through outer gallery stairs. Maude looked toward the half-severed Dragonwood spine. Outer gallery stairs serve nobles first, she said. They serve the public hall, Ollis answered. They do not serve a worker trapped behind kitchen smoke. Garen's face did not soften. It sharpened. Was the full release wheel log attached to the closure summary sent to Crown Review? No, Your Majesty, the scribe said. The summary cites it by reference. No full copy. And my demolition file? Domestic summary only. No mechanism log. No witness roll. A rescue could be reduced without being denied. That was how a palace kept its hands clean. The same cited file supported sealing the wing and later treating the stair as an obstruction, Maude said. Ollis's eyes narrowed. Supported review of an obsolete structure. The Crown had inspected alternative routes. Through the gallery. Through lawful circulation. Lawful circulation is not the same as reachable air. Garen looked from one to the other. Current work rotations. Do they use the same service throat named in the release wheel log? Ollis opened the domestic roll. Lamp service, coal relief, polish crews, and night ash removal enter the Cinder Hall North line through the outer post. That is not entry into sealed rooms. But it is the same corridor system, Maude said. It is a lawful service line. A rotation roll could call a body temporary even after midnight. Temporary work is not housing, Ollis said. Then the live occupancy count can begin without breaking the seal. Count names assigned to midnight rotations. Count who checked in. Count who checked out. Compare them to pressure events and heat loss nights. If all bodies left, the numbers will say so. Garen's attention fixed on her. You ask for count before opening. I ask for count before assumption. He turned to the guard captain. Post witnesses at the outer service gate. No one enters the sealed rooms. No one enters or leaves the service line unrecorded. Bring the midnight rotation roll, outer post check chain, and firehouse map. Ollis bowed. As ordered, he did not protest. He did not confess. He remained what the record allowed him to be. The steward whose office had inherited a classification and kept it alive. The fire reader turned the final page. Additional notation. Release wheel remained engaged after evacuation crossing ended. Operator found deceased at mechanism station. Cause of death, smoke inhalation, and hand burns. Conduct classification pending domestic review. Pending. The word struck Maude harder than guilt would have. Pending meant the firehouse had not called Bram disorder. Someone after the smoke had. Garen saw her flinch and still did not reach for her. At the foot of the page, smaller ink had been added after domestic review. Classification transferred to Cinderhole closure file. The release wheel log did not clear Bram. It only showed where his unfinished classification had been carried next, into the closure file that taught the palace to treat opened exits as danger. The next record would not ask whether Bram had been brave. It would ask whether the palace had used his opened exit to close every exit after him. The midnight rotation roll did not say Ollis Merrow had hidden servants in the sealed wing. It said more workers entered the Cinderhall service line than checked out before dawn. The roll arrived in two forms. The first was the steward's summary. Clean, narrow, and easy to approve. It listed lamp service, coal relief, ash removal, gallery polish, and linen exchange, all marked temporary, all marked completed before morning bell. The second came chained from the outer post in a leather sleeve, stiff with soot, oil, and tired hands. Its pages were not clean. Thumbprints crossed the margins. Names had been written at odd angles. Candle grease covered one time mark. Maude trusted the second book more, not because it loved truth. Books loved nothing. But a post chain kept marks in the order hands made them. It did not have the luxury of becoming elegant afterward. Garen Vale, stood at the witness table, beneath the broken Dragonwood stair, the release wheel log still open near his left hand. He had not softened since Bram's entry. If anything, his restraint had grown harder. A king could become more dangerous when he realized he had been briefed instead of informed. "Read the summary first," he said. Ollis Merrow inclined his head and passed it to the scribe. "Midnight rotation. Cinderhall North Service Line. 22 workers assigned. 22 duties completed. No overnight housing. No emergency delay. No sealed room entry." The court heard that version easily. It sounded like a closed door. Maude looked at the outer post sleeve. "Now read the chain." Ollis's expression did not alter. "The chain is a guard instrument, not a housing roll." "No," Maude said. "It is a count of bodies entering and leaving the line the roll calls temporary." Garin nodded once to the scribe. The outer post check chain opened with the night bell. 22 assigned names entered before midnight. 4 lamp servants, 5 coal carriers, 3 ash boys, 6 gallery polishers, 2 linen women, and 2 repair hands. That matched the summary. Then the checkouts began. 4 lamp servants out, 5 coal carriers out, 2 ash boys out, 4 polishers out, 1 linen woman out, 2 repair hands out. The scribe paused. "How many remain without checkout?" Garin asked. "4, Your Majesty," Ollis answered before the murmur could grow. "Not missing. Likely transferred to secondary duties at the inner post. The Cinderhall line has more than one lawful exit. Show the inner post chain," Maude said. The request was simple enough to be cruel. A junior clerk searched the sleeve and found only a folded summary slip. No individual marks, no names, no times. The slip read, "Secondary duties completed under domestic supervision." "Domestic supervision can be lawful," Ollis said. "Yes," Maude answered. "But it cannot replace the count after the count has already failed." Garin turned toward the firehouse map. "Lay out the corridor system." The old map was weighted with brass corners. Red ink traced the south mechanism room where Bram had held the wheel 6 years earlier. Black ink marked the Ashrunner passage. Blue ink showed the current Cinderhall North Service Line. Maude had studied those lines until they lived behind her eyes. The fire reader touched the map. "The current service line does not open into sealed rooms by ordinary passage. It runs along the pressure side of the sealed wing wall, passing the old release throat and the dormant chamber row." "Pressure side," Garin repeated. "Where the Dragonwood hinge recorded repeated load," Maude said. "The map does not prove beds. It proves the count failed beside the same wall where the stair recorded heat and pressure." Ollis's voice remained even. "Or it proves late workers paused near a sealed wall during lawful service." "Then call them," Maude said. The court became still. She kept her hands folded, because one desperate gesture would give them grief instead of law. "Begin the live occupancy count from the outer service gate. Do not open the sealed door. Do not enter the sealed rooms. Call the 4 names without checkout. If they are elsewhere on lawful duty, the palace can answer without breaking a seal." Garin looked at her for a long moment. The scar on his throat shifted as he swallowed whatever heat wanted to rise there. "Names." The scribe read them. "Tessa Morn, linen woman. Jorin Ash, ash boy. Maret Hale, gallery polisher. Oswin Cray, lamp servant." No one in the noble rows knew those names. That was part of the wound Maude could not yet prove. The guard captain sent runners to the outer service gate, the coal court, the lamp room, and the gallery stores. No one moved toward the black sealed door. The seal remained intact under Garin's crest. The Dragonwood stair hung above them, silent, broken, and dim. While they waited, Garin asked, "When did the work rotation end?" "Before dawn bell," Ollis said. The outer post guard, an older woman with smoke scars across both wrists, bowed before answering. The last individual checkout was 1 bell before dawn. After that, only the domestic completion slip was delivered. By whom? Garin asked. Steward's runner. Not Steward Merrow himself. Ollis's mouth tightened. Runners carry office completions every night. That is not irregular. No, Maude said softly. Only incomplete. The first runner returned from the coal court. No Jorin Ash. The second returned from the lamp room. No Oswin Cray. The third returned from gallery stores. No Maret Hale. The fourth returned last from the linen exchange, carrying a torn duty card with Tessa Morn's name marked, reassigned after midnight. Reassigned where? Garin asked. The runner's face paled. The card says Inner Service Rest. Ollis drew breath, but Maude spoke before the court could decide what it wanted that phrase to mean. Inner Service Rest is not a room on the housing roll. The outer post guard opened the final column of the check chain. It appears as a key notation, Mistress Kestrel, not housing. Garin turned the book himself. The key notation did not open the sealed door. It did not prove illegal housing. It did not name who had authorized the change. It only placed 4 unreturned workers under an inner service key after midnight, while the Royal Register continued to call the wing empty. At the edge of the page, in a narrow column Maude had not been allowed to see before, the old firehouse map number had been copied beside the key mark. Same pressure wall, same service throat. The live occupancy count had not found the servants. It had found the place where the palace stopped counting them. The inner service key mark did not say 4 workers had been imprisoned behind the sealed wing. It said the palace had a place to send bodies after midnight, without calling that place housing. Garin kept the door sealed. The court wanted the black seal broken so it could gasp, accuse. Maude wanted it whole until the records had nowhere left to hide. Bring the key ledger, Garin said. All inner service keys. Last 6 weeks. Ollis Merrow bowed. Key ledgers are domestic security records. Then domestic security will read them under Crown witness. That was not an apology. It was not trust. It was a king learning to put weight on the floor before stepping. The ledger came in a narrow, iron-bound case, smaller than the firehouse log, and more dangerous because it looked ordinary. A palace could conceal cruelty inside dull things. A key returned late, a duty changed after midnight, a rest mark written where a bed should have been. The scribe opened the book beside the outer post chain, while Maude stood 2 paces back. Read the key mark beside Tessa Morn, Garin said. The scribe found the column. Inner Service Rest, key mark K7, issued after midnight to domestic runner Pelin. Reason: recovery interval after linen smoke, cleaning. Return mark at dawn bell. Pelin is one of my runners, Ollis said. He carries keys for authorized rest stations. Workers exposed to lamp, soot, or ash may sit before returning to full duty. That is protection, not housing. Protection has a checkout, Maude said. The outer post guard nodded before she could stop herself. Garin saw it. Speak, he said. The older woman swallowed. Rest stations usually record a release bell, Your Majesty. It keeps a tired worker from being forgotten behind service stone. Was there a release bell? The scribe searched the column. No bell mark recorded. Ollis's fingers tightened once against his sleeve. An omission in a night chain does not establish harm. No, Maude said. It establishes that the record stopped before the body returned. The next 3 names carried the same key mark. Jorin Ash, Ashboy. Maret Hale, gallery polisher. Oswin Cray, lamp servant. All 4 entered different duties. All 4 disappeared into the same inner service rest notation after midnight. All 4 had dawn return marks written by office completion, not individual hand. Garin looked at the map. Where is K7? The fire reader placed a brass pin on the old corridor plan. Current service line, north pressure wall, adjacent to dormant chamber row, not labeled as housing. Capacity? Maude answered because no one else would say it plainly. 2 benches. Ollis did not look at her. Temporary recovery spaces are not counted by bed capacity. They are not sleeping chambers. A body asleep on a bench still weighs on a floor, Maude said. Dragonwood does not care what word the roll used. Garin turned toward her. How would your stare record K7? Through pressure transferred along the north wall. Not as guilt. Not as identity. Only repeated load after lock bell, beside retained warmth. Can that be read without opening the seal? Yes. If the broken hinge is braced, not cut further, the stair can take a paired reading against the map line. Ollis's voice cooled. Mistress Kestrel's mechanism is already compromised by demolition. Any reading now may be unreliable. That is why I would not take it alone, Maude said. 2 crown builders, 1 fire reader, 1 domestic witness. Your steward's office may watch every mark. Brace the hinge, Garin ordered. No final cuts. The hammerman stepped back. No one called it a victory. Maude would not have trusted one if they had. A final cut paused was not a restoration. It was only evidence spared long enough to speak in measurements. The builders set a cradle under the split support. Brass teeth bit the underside of the broken tread. The gauge from the first live reading was reset along the firehouse map line, not toward the sealed door, but toward K7's pressure wall. Maude watched without breathing too deeply. The old skill rose in her hands anyway. Hinge slope, load memory, heat lag, release tension. Bram had once teased that she could hear Wood thinking. He had been wrong. She heard what rulers ignored. The needle lifted, not high, not dramatic. The reading moved with the stubborn patience of a fact no one had invited. It crossed the vacancy line, stopped below full occupancy, and trembled at intermittent load. The crown builder read the gauge. Consistent with repeated temporary occupation. Not permanent housing. Not empty. Not empty. The words did not clear Maude. They did not condemn Ollis. They only took 1 brick out of the wall the palace had built from summaries. Ollis recovered quickly. Temporary occupation is permitted under domestic labor law. For how many hours? Garin asked. Until recovery is complete. Who determines complete? Domestic supervision. By bell or by summary? Ollis paused too long. The answer came from the outer post guard, quiet and unwanted. By release bell, Your Majesty. Unless the worker is transferred to sleeping custody. Sleeping custody. Not housing, not vacancy, not a room admitted on the roll. A phrase built to hold a person without letting the palace count where that person lay. Garin's face turned colder than flame. Read the labor law entry. The clerk found it in a supplemental column. Sleeping custody may be used for workers too exhausted or exposed to return through public passages before dawn. Must be recorded on the temporary custody sheet. Must include name, hour, supervising officer, and release destination. Bring the temporary custody sheet, Garin said. Ollis bowed again. Still proper. Still contained. If one exists for that night, it will be in domestic custody. If one exists, Maude repeated. Garin looked at her then, and the heat between them had nothing soft inside it. It was not romance. It was the terrible intimacy of being seen by the man whose order had nearly cut away the only witness sturdy enough to survive him. The temporary custody sheet arrived, folded inside the same summary packet that had approved demolition. Its seal had been broken before, then pressed flat again. The scribe opened it under witness. 4 names were written beneath K7. Beside the release destination, 1 line had been crossed out so hard the ink had torn the paper. The live count had not found a room full of servants. It had found a category the palace used when a worker became too inconvenient to count as gone and too invisible to count as housed. The temporary custody sheet did not prove 4 workers had been locked inside the sealed wing. It proved the palace had changed their destination after it had already stopped counting them at the outer post. Garin ordered the crossed line examined before any guard moved toward the black door. That, too, mattered. A door could give the court a single scandal. A changed destination could show the route that made scandal possible. Maude had learned, after Bram's inquest, that the first record was rarely the cruelest one. The cruelest record was the second copy, the tidy version made after smoke, after fear, after someone important had time to decide which words would survive. The temporary custody sheet lay beneath 3 witness stones. 4 names stood under K7. Tessa Morn, Jorin Ash, Marit Hale, Oswin Cray. Beside each name, the same release destination had been cut through with black ink until the parchment tore. "Do not scrape it," Maude said when the clerk reached for a knife. "Use lamp angle first." Ollis Merrow turned his head. "Mistress Kestrel now instructs Crown clerks. She instructs anyone who wishes to read the page without destroying it," Garin said. It was not defense. His voice held no warmth. But it was the first time he used her skill before the court without reducing it to grief. A lamp was brought low. The clerk tilted the page until the torn ink shone. Under the crossing stroke, the older writing rose in pressure shadows, not clean enough for certainty, but clear enough to stop the room from breathing easily. The scribe read slowly. "Release destination appears to begin with Northrest. Perhaps Annex. Final mark uncertain." "Northrest Annex is not on the housing roll," Maude said. Ollis answered at once. "Because it is not housing. Rest annexes are attached to service lines for recovery. Then it should be on the firehouse map." The fire reader unfolded the map again. His finger moved over corridors, old doors, service throats, coal runs, and dormant chambers. "No marked Northrest Annex beside K7. Older maps?" Garin asked. A second case came from the builder's shelf, carrying survey copies made before the south kitchen blaze. Dust lifted when the string broke. Maude saw the map before the reader named it. The same wall, the same bend, the same narrow chamber row Bram's opened corridor had once fed into. "Pre-closure map," the fire reader said. "Cinder Hall North Service Rest Chambers, later labeled dormant rooms." "Rest chambers," Garin repeated. Ollis's posture remained correct. "Old labels do not establish current use. Many palace spaces were renamed after the fire." "No," Maude said. "But a crossed release destination matching an old rest chamber means the count did not end at K7. Garin looked at the custody sheet. "Who supervised sleeping custody?" The clerk read the column. "Supervising officer. Domestic Night Deputy Varick. Sign mark present." "Summon him," Garin said. Ollis lifted a hand, not to stop the order, only to define it. "Deputy Varick serves under domestic authority. His statements should be taken with office counsel present. They will be taken under Crown witness," Garin said. "Counsel may listen. No apology. No restoration. Only the opening of another record under pressure." While runners left, the temporary custody sheet was compared against the summary packet that had approved demolition. The 4 names did not appear there. K7 did. Sleeping custody did not. The cross destination did not. The packet's wording reduced the night to a line. Temporary rotation completed without occupancy concern. Maude stared at the phrase until it blurred. Without occupancy concern. As if concern had been a mood, not a missing count. The crown builder placed the brass gauge beside the map, aligning the broken Dragonwood hinge reading with the old rest chamber wall. "The pressure line falls here," he said, "not inside the sealed rooms by proof, along the wall that served them before closure." "Say that again," Garin ordered. The builder swallowed. "The stair does not prove bodies were in the sealed rooms. It proves repeated load pressed toward the wall of the former rest chambers after lockbell." Maude nodded once. "That is all it can prove." The court did not like that. Courts preferred a woman who would overreach so they could dismiss her. Maude gave them less than they wanted and more than they could escape. Deputy Varick arrived in a plain brown coat, hair damp with hurried washing. He bowed first to Garin, then to Ollis, then nowhere near Maude. "You supervised K7 sleeping custody last night?" Garin asked. "I received the completion slip, Your Majesty. That was not the question." Varick's throat worked. "I did not personally stand the station." "Who did?" Runner Pellin carried the key. "Where were the 4 workers released?" Varick looked to Ollis. The steward did not move. He did not signal. He only watched, procedural as a closed ledger. "Answer the king," Ollis said. Varick lowered his eyes. "To inner rest under overflow." "Overflow from what?" Garin asked. "Rotations, Your Majesty." Maude's voice stayed careful. "Work does not overflow. Rooms do." The sentence landed with a softness worse than accusation. Varick shook his head. "I was told to use the old term. Inner rest. Overflow. No housing entry." "Who told you?" Garin asked. "Domestic instruction sheet." "Bring it," Ollis said. Instruction sheets are copied from standing office practice. They may not bear the author of each use. "No one has named misconduct," Maude said. "We are still naming route." Garin looked at her then, and for one breath she saw the violence it cost him not to burn through the delay. A dragon king could tear doors off hinges. A responsible one had to let paper condemn what force would only scatter. The instruction sheet came folded inside the night deputy's pouch. It listed acceptable terms for temporary labor movement: recovery interval, inner rest, overflow hold, completion under domestic supervision. At the bottom, beside the phrase overflow hold, was a reference code. Not a name. Not guilt. Not yet. Cinder Hall Dormant Room Index. Restricted Domestic Appendix. The temporary custody sheet had not opened the sealed wing. It had opened the appendix, where the palace kept places too useful to count and too dangerous to name. The restricted domestic appendix did not say Palace Steward Ollis Merrow had built a prison inside Cinder Hall. It said the palace had preserved old rest chambers under names too narrow to count as rooms and too useful to erase. Garin ordered the appendix read where every witness could hear it. Ollis did not refuse. Refusal would have been easier to judge. Instead, he requested the proper chain, the proper seal, the proper domestic council, and the proper limitation that no restricted passage be entered while the firecrest remained whole. Each request sounded reasonable. That was why Maude distrusted them. Cruelty rarely arrived shouting in palaces. It arrived with a seal ribbon and a clerk trained to say temporary. The appendix came in a grey leather folio from the steward's archive. It did not look old. Its corners had been repaired, its tabs replaced, its title written in recent ink above older scratches: Restricted Domestic Appendix. Dormant Service Spaces and Emergency Labor Holds. Emergency Labor Holds. The phrase moved through the hall without making anyone cry out. Nobles did not understand the weight of being held by a phrase. Garin's jaw tightened. "Read the entry tied to K7. The scribe found the code. K7. Inner Service Rest. Linked Spaces. Dormant North Chambers 1 through 4. Legal status: non-housing recovery and labor continuity stations. Capacity advisory: 2 per station for sitting rest, not sleep. Fire classification: sealed exterior access, internal service supervision. Not sleep, Maude repeated. Ollis turned slightly. That is what the appendix says. It also says 4 chambers. For recovery. For bodies. The court disliked the word. Maude used it because Dragonwood did. Heat did not care whether a person had permission to be tired. Weight did not ask if a bench had been renamed. Garin kept his eyes on the folio. "Read the revision date. 3 years after the South Kitchen blaze," the scribe said. "Reaffirmed each winter thereafter. By whose office? Steward's office, domestic risk, and palace labor allocation. Attached to Crown Review?" The scribe searched the tabbed edge. Cited by summary. Full appendix restricted. A king could sign a demolition order from a summary and never see the rooms the summary refused to call rooms. Maude did not say it. Garin had already heard too much silence taking shape around him. The fire reader placed the old map beside the appendix. Dormant north chambers 1 through 4 ran behind the pressure wall, not open to the gallery, not open to public passage, not marked as housing. Their old exits had been folded into the service line after Bram's fire, then sealed from the outside under Garin's crest. "Does the current service line connect to these chambers?" Garin asked. The fire reader answered carefully. "By internal supervision only. The map shows a maintenance throat from K7 to the dormant chamber row. Not public access. Not exterior access. Can workers enter it without breaking the royal fire seal?" "Yes." From the service side, if the inner key is issued. Ollis folded his hands. "Which is why the seal can remain intact while lawful recovery occurs." Maude looked at the live count sheet. "Then count lawful recovery." 4 names remained on the page. Tessa Morn, Jorin Ash, Marit Hale, Oswin Cray. 4 workers who had entered by duty, vanished under completion, reappeared under sleeping custody, then passed into an appendix that insisted it was not housing. The guard captain returned with the first live count report. "Outer service gate secured. No one has entered or exited the line since the order. Coal court, lamp room, linen exchange, and gallery stores report 3 of the 4 names absent from duty. 1 duty card for Tessa Morn marked in arrest. No individual release marks found." "Call through the service line," Maude said. Ollis turned to her. "Calling into restricted domestic space risks alarming workers and creating the very panic this law exists to prevent." "No." "Calling names through an open service line risks an answer." Garin's eyes moved to hers. The heat in them was controlled so tightly it might have been pain. "Can it be done without opening sealed rooms?" "Yes." From the outer post speaking tube, it was built for fire instructions before the closure. The fire reader checked the map and nodded. "The tube runs along the old release throat. It does not breach the seal." "Do it," Garin said. No one praised Maude. No one moved aside for her. The guards went to the outer post, while the court remained beneath the broken stair, listening to a messenger repeat 4 names through brass and stone. Tessa Morn, Jorin Ash, Marit Hale, Oswin Cray. The first call returned nothing. The second brought only the hollow scrape of old metal. The third came back with a faint knock. Not a voice. 3 taps, then 1. The guard captain looked toward Maude. "Firehouse response code," Maude said. Too much smoke or too little air for speech. The court froze. Ollis spoke quickly but not wildly. Or a worker striking pipe in confusion. "A response code does not establish location." "No," Maude said. "It establishes a trained response from inside the line." Garin's voice lowered. "Repeat the call." This time the answer came twice. 3 taps, 1 tap. Then another, weaker. The brass tube carried no names. It carried only enough to turn the live count from an administrative question into an evacuation question. Maude looked at the black door and did not ask to open it yet. "Check the fire, air gauge," she said. The outer post guard sent back the reading. "Low draw through the service line. Blocked return at the dormant chamber row. Heat above rest. Station limit." The Dragonwood stair above them gave one quiet sound. Not speech. Not warning by will. A hinge under stored tension settling toward release. Ollis's face had gone pale, but he remained procedural. "The seal still requires domestic authority before breach." Garin looked at the red wax bearing his own crest. Maude spoke before he could choose force and ruin the chain. "Then read the emergency exception." The scribe found it in the appendix. His voice thinned. "Emergency exception. If live count produces non-verbal firehouse response from restricted domestic space and air gauge falls below service safety, Royal Fire Authority may transfer breach control to certified evacuation builder. Every eye moved to Maude. The appendix had not opened the door. It had only named the one person in the hall legally permitted to break the king's seal. The emergency exception did not clear Maude Kestrel. It only transferred breach control from the king's crest to the builder whose warnings had been left unopened. For one breath, no one moved. The red wax seal hung on the black door like a verdict too proud to know it had expired. Garan Vale's dragon crest pressed deep into it, the same crest that had kept the sealed rooms closed through inspections, summaries, and polished answers. Behind the wall, the brass speaking tube gave one faint tap, then nothing. Maude stepped forward. Ollis Merrow's voice followed her, tight but formal. The exception requires certified evacuation authority. Maude held out her left wrist. Beneath the soot and old leather cuff, the builder's fire mark lay stamped in iron ink, renewed every winter by smoke reading, hinge release, corridor mapping, and body count under panic conditions. Maude Kestrel, certified evacuation builder. Cinderhall license, 12. Suspended from new installation bids. Not stripped of emergency breach authority. Garan turned to the Crown clerk. Confirm it. The clerk searched the builder register. License 12. Active for emergency breach, fire, stair inspection, and evacuation mechanism control. Commercial commissions restricted after dispute over Cinderhall obstruction complaint. After dispute, not after error. A phrase could starve a woman without ever convicting her. Garen's gaze came back to Maude. What do you require? Silence from everyone not counting, she said. 2 wet cloths. A pry hook. 1 fire reader at the gauge. The guard captain at the outer post. No soldiers rushing the door. No witnesses crowding the line. And you 1 step behind me, not beside me. The court stirred. Garan did not. Why? Because the Dragonwood hinge responds to leading heat and body pressure. Your blood runs hotter than mine. If you enter first, the stair will read king, not evacuation route. His pride stood between them like a drawn blade. Then he stepped back exactly 1 pace. Maude broke the royal fire seal, not with drama. She scored the wax along the emergency line, lifted the crest whole, and handed it to the clerk so no one could later say she had shattered evidence. The black door opened only a handspan before sour heat breathed through the gap. Air is thin, the fire reader called. Hold the door. Do not widen. She put her shoulder low, listened to the hinge, and touched the Dragonwood tread nearest the threshold. It unfolded once. Not because it knew who waited beyond, but because blocked return air and repeated load behind the wall matched evacuation tension. A second tread dropped. A third locked under her boot. Beyond the door, the passage was narrow, hot, and darker than a lawful rest station had any right to be. Benches lined the wall. Blankets lay folded beneath them. A tin water cup had rolled near the floor. That was not confession. It was not yet a housing record. It was only enough to make the word rest feel obscene. Tessa Morn, Maude called. A woman answered by coughing. Joreen Ash. 3 taps came from deeper in the chamber row. Maude moved down 1 step. Garan followed 1 step behind. Not touching her. Not leading her. The heat of him pressed at her back like a contained furnace. She hated that she could feel the care in his restraint before he had earned the right to offer it. Names first, she said. The first worker emerged from a side recess, a linen woman with ash along her hairline and eyes watering from stale air. Tessa Morn clutched a duty card in one hand. Behind her came Oswin Cray, lamp soot black around his mouth. Joreen Ash was half carried by Marit Hale, both too young for the court to have learned their faces. 4 counted, the guard captain called. Not done, Maude answered. Read the chamber row. The fire reader checked the appendix against the wall marks. Dormant chambers 1 through 4. Maude opened none fully. She checked each threshold, counted heat pockets, bedding, cups. Every number went to the clerk before any object moved. Evidence first. Rescue without record could be rewritten as trespass by morning. In chamber 3, she found 6 rolled mats stacked behind a screen. Ollis spoke from the doorway, voice strained. Stored emergency bedding. Permitted during storm seasons. Then it has a storage entry, Maude said. The clerk checked the domestic inventory. No bedding entry under K7. Ollis said nothing more. From the far end of the row, a low rumble moved through the palace. Not dragon roar. Flame in a chimney shaft somewhere above them, drawing badly through a blocked return. Heat pressed harder along the ceiling. A guard shouted from the hall, "Smoke in the west gallery!" The nobles began to move. Ollis snapped. "Your Majesty, the throne wing contains the war masks and treaty banners. If the return draft spreads, no one leaves this count," Maude said. The words struck like a slap. A widow builder giving an order while smoke found the royal gallery. Garin looked at the workers, then toward the west. His symbols, his dead dragons waited behind polished doors. 4 breathing servants stood in a corridor his register called empty. "What is the evacuation route?" he asked. She pointed to the Dragonwood treads. "Workers first, down the service line to open air, then gallery containment. If you send heat ahead of them, the hinge will pull toward you. Stay behind." The old king in him wanted command. The wounded man wanted to burn through the problem. The ruler he had not yet proven himself to be held still. "Workers first," Garin said. Maude led them out. Tessa Morn stumbled on the second tread, and Garin's hand rose, stopped, then waited until Maude gave the nod. Only then did he brace the rail instead of taking the woman's arm, 1 step behind. Exactly as ordered, when the 4 workers crossed into the open hall, the Dragonwood stair released another folded span, carrying them toward the outer service gate. The court watched Servant Grey pass before royal armor. Only after the last worker reached breathable air did Maude turn toward the west gallery smoke. Ollis stood beside the broken seal, pale but still unreadable. The emergency breach had not exposed the whole crime. It had not named who built the category or who crossed out the destination. It had only proved that the wing called empty could hold living workers while the palace argued over words. Then the Dragonwood stairs unfolded again, this time toward the War Dragon gallery Garin had tried to save by cutting them down. The Dragonwood stairs did not unfold toward the War Dragon gallery because they mourned the masks. They unfolded because smoke, blocked, draft, and cut evacuation bracing had turned the memorial hall into the next place without a safe way out. Maude did not run. Running made heat follow panic. Bram had taught her that before she ever became a widow, back when fire drills were only drills and Cinder Hall still admitted that servants needed exits. She turned from the 4 rescued workers, checked that Tessa Morn could breathe, that Jorin Ash's knees held, that Marit Hale and Oswin Cray were past the outer gate, and only then faced the west gallery, where smoke was beginning to bruise the white stone. Garin Vale stood 1 step behind her. The distance between them was small enough for his heat to touch the back of her coat, large enough to obey the order she had given him. Court witnesses saw it. Builders saw it. Servants saw it. The Dragon King, who had ordered her stairs cut down for a memorial aisle, waited behind the woman who knew how the palace breathed. "Where is the smoke coming from?" he asked. "Not from the gallery flame," Maude said. "From a return draft that has nowhere to empty." Ollis Merrow followed at the edge of the hall, with the domestic appendix clasped to his chest. His face had regained its careful stillness, though ash had settled on 1 sleeve. "The gallery chimney shafts were inspected yesterday. Chimneys carry flame upward," Maude said. "Return drafts pull bad air away from the floor. They are not the same route." The Crown Fire Reader opened the new gallery plan across a bench. Its lines were beautiful, too clean for a working palace. War masks along the north wall, mourning banners between the pillars. Visitor aisle widened. Servant passage narrowed. Decorative stone facing over the old service grills. Maude tapped the facing marks. "Here," Ollis said. Those grills were inactive. According to which reading? The architectural summary, not the firehouse map. Garen's eyes moved to the old map, still spread beneath the broken stair. "Compare them." The builders laid the firehouse map over the gallery plan. The mismatch appeared slowly, not as accusation, but as geometry. The old return draft ran behind the gallery wall, then down toward the same service throat connected to K7. The new gallery facing covered 2 grills and narrowed the third behind the planned mask display. A nobleman whispered that the masks could be moved. Maude heard him and did not spare him a glance. Now he says it. Garen's jaw flexed. "Read the demolition cut list." A clerk pulled the list from the gallery file. "Remove visible Dragonwood stair spine, north service fold, lower brace, old grill casings and soot, dark framing inconsistent with memorial finish, preserve load, bearing stone, install dragon mask facing before dedication." "Soot, dark framing," Maude repeated. The crown builder looked toward the stair. The lower brace carried hinge tension into the service wall, and the old grill casings carried draft around the memorial hall, Maude said. "Cut both, and the smoke has to choose another way." The Dragonwood stair answered by settling another tread toward the gallery. Not truth, not judgment. The hinge was reading pressure, heat, and blocked return, the same simple language it had spoken since the first hammer fell. Garen looked at Ollis. Was Maude Kestrel's draft warning in the gallery file? Ollis opened the summary packet. Mistress Kestrel submitted multiple objections. The office grouped them under obstruction concerns and emotional conflict from prior fire history. Was the draft warning in the file I signed? The question made the hall colder than smoke. The clerk checked the royal copy. "No full draft warning, Your Majesty. Summary line only. Builder objects to removal of old service elements." Maude closed her eyes once. Old service elements. Not evacuation stairs. Not return grills. Not hinge braces. Not the air a worker needed when flame turned a corridor blind. Garen did not apologize. He had no right to spend apology while smoke still moved. "What must be opened?" "The third grill," Maude said. "And the Dragonwood brace must be held, not cut. If the brace fails, the stair will drop toward the hottest pressure and may block the service gate. Can it be held?" "Yes, by weight and heat." His eyes sharpened. "Mine." She hated that he understood before she could refuse. "No flame," she said. "No flame. Do not command the stair. Do not touch the hinge. Stand where I place you and hold your heat steady." For a man born to rule dragons, obedience looked almost like pain. Still, Garen moved to the brace point she marked. He set both hands on the iron support and lowered his heat into the metal, not enough to burn, only enough to keep the Dragonwood from snapping cold under stress. The court watched their king become a brace for the servant's stair he had ordered destroyed. Maude climbed the half-folded treads toward the smoke-blackened grill. The air was bitter with hot oil and old dust. Below her, Ollis called, "If the grill is opened without preservation cloth, ash may damage the dragon masks." Maude's hand stilled on the pry hook. The silence that followed was not courtly. It was ugly. Garen did not look away from the brace. "The masks can be cleaned." Ollis bowed his head. "Of course, Your Majesty." But everyone had heard the order of his concern. Maude drove the hook into the decorative facing and pulled. The first plate cracked. Behind it, the old grill coughed smoke like a throat, clearing after years of being told it was ornamental. She pulled again. Air rushed through, hot enough to sting her eyes, but moving now. Finally moving. The smoke in the gallery lifted from knee height. Servants at the outer gate began coughing less. Nobles stepped back from the war masks they had come to admire. The fire reader shouted the gauge numbers as they fell. Unsafe. Strained. Breathable. Controlled. Only then did the Dragonwood stairs stop unfolding. The gallery had not burned. The throne wing had not fallen. But the record had. The firehouse map, demolition cut list, gallery plan, and missing draft warning lay together on the witness table. None of them said Ollis had planned suffocation. None said Garin had known what his order removed. They only proved the royal gallery had been protected by summaries while the working exits were cut by names too vague to accuse. Maude descended the stair, soot on her cheek, hands steady. At the bottom of the demolition cut list, beneath the line for old grill casings, the clerk found a folded builder's tag, still stuck to the copy wax. Red warning tag. Maude's mark. Do not remove until live draft and occupancy reading are completed. Garin read it himself. The tag had not been absent from the palace. It had been present, attached, and left unread inside the file he signed. The red warning tag did not prove Garin Vale had meant to endanger his servants. It proved he had signed a demolition file after the warning inside it had already been made small enough to miss. The court did not move while he read it. Smoke thinned above the war dragon masks. Dragonwood treads hung between the service hall and the gallery, half broken, half saving, their ember lines dim now that air had somewhere to go. Maude stood below them with soot on her cheek and the pry hook still in her hand. No one called her dramatic. No one called her grieving, not while the king held her warning between two fingers and saw his own signature beneath it. Garin placed the red tag on the witness table. Root the file. The clerk found the docket chain. Builder's warning received. Fire safety appendix attached. Live draft and occupancy reading requested. Domestic review redirected. Summary prepared for Crown signature. Demolition approved before live reading. Ollis Merrow stood very still. Garin did not look at him first. That mattered. A king looking for one villain too quickly could spare the system that had made the villain useful. He looked at the papers instead. Read the redirect, he said. The scribe swallowed. Evacuation warning reclassified under memorial obstruction and emotional conflict. Occupancy concern judged inconclusive pending domestic completion. Inconclusive is not absent, Maude said. This time no one corrected her. Garin's hand closed on the edge of the table. Whose countersign? Palace Steward Ollis Merrow. Domestic Risk Deputy Varick. Labor Allocation Seal. Ollis bowed. Controlled to the end. Your Majesty. Each decision followed existing domestic language. Temporary custody, recovery holds, dormant chambers, and obstruction review were all lawful categories. Lawful categories kept workers behind a wall the register called empty, Garin said. The law permitted them. Then the law was built to hide them. The words moved through the hall like the first clean draft after smoke. Maude did not smile. She looked at Tessamorn, wrapped in a wet cloak. At Jorin Ash drinking water with shaking hands. At Oswin Cray trying not to cough before nobles. At Murray Hale staring at the floor, because being seen by the court was almost as frightening as being forgotten by it. Names into the record, Maude said. Garin turned to the clerk. All 4 workers rescued under emergency breach. Their duties, custody marks, and medical condition entered before any gallery repair. Every worker assigned to K7 for the last 6 weeks will be counted by name. Ollis's mouth tightened. That will expose domestic labor arrangements beyond this incident. Yes, Garin said. That is the point. The firehouse witness roll was opened again. Bram Kestrel's entry lay beside the current rotation chain. The old fire and the new breach did not become the same event. Maude would not let anyone make poetry out of procedure, but the route between them was now visible. An emergency exit opened during smoke, a conduct classification left pending, a later summary calling it disorder, a closure file treating open corridors as danger, a service wing sealed from public view. and the same language used to cut away the stares that could have read the truth sooner. Garin faced the builders, servants, nobles, and Dragon Court. I ordered evacuation work destroyed before reading the live occupancy records tied to it, he said. No Crown Herald softened the sentence. No steward translated it. The king gave his failure its full shape. I accepted a summary where the full release, wheel log, witness roll, draft warning, heat, loss map, stair pressure count, and occupancy request were absent. Under my authority, a gallery was preserved while workers were left without a lawful exit. Maude felt the words enter the room and make something old inside her ache. Not heal. Not yet. Public truth was not tenderness. It was the ground tenderness had to stand on if it was ever going to matter. Garin turned to the fire reader. Bram Kestrel's record. The fire reader opened the log with both hands. Current classification. Unauthorized corridor release, causing staff disorder. Strike the classification pending full review, Garin said. Enter provisional correction. Emergency release held during smoke obstruction with 29 recorded crossings before roof beam fall. Operator deceased at mechanism station after maintaining release wheel. Final correction to be completed by independent firehouse tribunal with witness roll attached. Maude's breath caught, not cleared. Not fully, but no longer buried under panic. Garin looked at her then. Is that accurate? She hated him for asking so late. She respected him for asking at all. It is the most the record proves today. Then it will say no more and no less. Ollis was removed from the table without chains, because chains were for bodies, and this had been done through offices. His seals, ledgers, summaries, custody sheets, appendix revisions, and demolition routing were surrendered under witness. Deputy Varick followed. Labor allocation seal box was carried out next. No one confessed. No one needed to. The paper had begun doing what men avoided. By sunset, Garin signed the first emergency decree before the broken Dragonwood stair. Palace Safety Authority would pass from domestic order to an independent builders' council for every inhabited and working wing. No gallery, chapel, throne room, or memorial hall could remove an evacuation structure without live occupancy count, firehouse map review, draft reading, and worker witness roll. Recovery holds became housing if a body remained past midnight. Sleeping custody became illegal unless recorded by name, hour, supervising officer, medical reason, and open exit. The Dragonwood fire stairs would be restored before a single war dragon mask returned to the wall. Only after the decree was sealed did Garin come to Maude without armor between them. He stopped one step away. I will not ask you to forgive a correction I have only begun, he said. Good, she thought. Aloud, she said, then begin where the stairs were cut. I will, and where Bram's name was made useful. I will, and where servant doors became less important than royal memory. His throat moved around the scar. I will put their exits above my memorials. Maude looked at him, at the powerful hands that had held a brace instead of a throne claim, at the king who had followed one step behind her through smoke, because the mechanism required humility before survival. It was not enough for love. It was enough for the next honest step. When the Builders' Council sits, she said, you may attend. As king, as witness. For the first time, Garin bowed to her without ceremony. Above them, the restored hinge cradle gave a quiet wooden sigh as the Dragonwood settled back into place. It did not bless them. It did not choose them. It only held the weight of a palace finally learning that beauty without exits was another kind of fire. Maude left the hall before the nobles could decide whether to admire her. Garin followed at a distance, exactly one step behind.